Welcome to Techfile. We cover the biggest technology trends impacting our lives. My name is Kelley Boss. Now, you're about to meet a team of dedicated neurosurgeons using cutting-edge technology to ensure we have better and more neurosurgeons in future. So on one side, we had senior neurosurgeons in Chiromo using actual cadavers to upgrade their skills. And on the other, you'd wonder what would students use to learn their craft. And that's where tech and simulation comes in. These students were using VR headsets to learn the brain's anatomy, simulated heads to practice drilling, a special mobile app, and much more. Some tech-heavy next-level scientific stuff. Their goal, nothing short of a medical revolution. Well, that's today on Techfile. So let's start at Aga Khan, where everything felt at home. Here, in place of actual human heads, were simulated modules, VR headsets, and get this, your phone. I mean, you could download an app and all of a sudden you see your way through the brain and see a bunch of nerves and their functions all through the mobile app.
It shows you how different parts of the brain connect. So let me just reduce them to just a few.
Let me see.
So this is a fantastic opportunity. We're the third in Africa this year who are doing this neurosimulation, and it's a very special project that was founded in Italy, where rather than using cadavers, we're using augmented reality and visual reality. So our participants that you can see represent all the corners of Africa. That's the first thing. They're largely young neurosurgeons, and the faculty itself is primarily Kenyans, as well as we have representatives from Cameroon and the US. We have the most fantastic thing about this is how we're able to do that. As you know, Kenya is a leader in technology in the region, so we're able to use that just using our smartphones and the models. You can see we're doing group work together. I think in some of the shots that you've got people using visual reality to simulate theater, anatomy labs. And so there's a lot of small group working on different projects. It's all self-directed, meaning that they're learning at a different pace. And it's fantastic.
And the reason why this is important is traditionally you could learn on the job, and on the job I mean perhaps risking patients' lives. But in this case, these young neurosurgeons practice on thousands and thousands of simulated modules, and that makes a huge difference in the quality of neurosurgeons in Kenya and the region.
Simulation is still fairly new in neurosurgery. It began obviously with the airline industry and then crossed over into medicine, especially in some of the other surgical fields like general surgery. In neurosurgery, historically, we've learned on the job. But now in the modern era, there's a vision that whereas in the past you would say see one, do one, teach one of a procedure, today we say see one in the theater, simulate one or simulate many, do one, and then teach everyone how to do it after that. So simulation is the future. There are a lot of different technologies that can accomplish it. Some are very expensive, some are very inexpensive. And so what this represents is our exploration into the field.
While the World Health Organization recommends at least one neurosurgeon for every 200,000 people, Kenya has a ratio of one neurosurgeon for every 5 million people. That's around 39 neurosurgeons, out of whom 6 are women and 2 don't practice in Kenya. A dire need for neurosurgeons, and this workshop speaks volumes. So let me see if I got this right. See one in the theater, simulate many, do one, and teach everyone. And that's the beauty of technology. And that's why Dr. Mogere likened this training module to a force multiplier in military terms.
This is a much more efficient model of training because the resources required, say cadavers and so on, they are not easily found. But you can 3D print silicon brains by the thousands. And using software, you can copy that piece of software by the thousands. So the capacity and the bandwidth to train is just that much more effective. Not only that, it's much safer. Not only is it much safer, it's obviously more ethical. And with that, we are increasing the capacity to impact technical skills at various levels. We are increasing the capacity for young trainees and even older trainees really to practice their craft over and over. So in many ways, it's what a military person would call a force multiplier.
There you go. Ali.
1, 2, 3, up surgeon.
1, 2, 3,
up surgeon.
The UpSurgeon Global Training Program, it is a simulation program. That is, it is a training program to help the young neurosurgeons and the medical students to be able to acquaint themselves with neuroanatomy, that's anatomy of the structure of the brain. Okay, it also helps doctors that operate upon the brain to be able to have better skills, okay, to be able to give optimal care to their patients. Because in our settings, it is difficult to get cadavers, okay, because before, traditionally, we use cadavers to be able to teach medical students and young doctors to be able to study the structure of the brain. But because of the inaccessibility to cadavers and the cost and also cultural factors, we need to look for alternatives to be able to allow students to be able to study the anatomy of the brain. So that's why we develop these models to be able to enhance the teaching of the structure of the brain. Today we cannot ignore the role of the information and technology in sciences. So we need to look for easier ways and better alternatives for people to be able to study the anatomy of the brain. So in addition to the hands-on which they are having, many young people today, they have their cell phones, their smartphones. So if we associate the virtual reality now to the hands-on, it gives them, supplements their learning of the neuroanatomy.
Now imagine you have the skills to save someone's life, but the surgery could have terrible consequences. It's the kind of choice neurosurgeons have to face almost every day. Now, I spoke to one of Kenya's finest in the field on just why it's important to have frequent forums to inform each other on the best practices. Now, just to issue the obvious warning, this segment could have images of the actual human brain.
Neurosurgery is unique in the aspects of all healthcare. We benefit from the most demanding of clinical conditions. We deal with the most complicated, with often catastrophic outcomes when things don't go well, and often extremely rewarding when things go well, because a lot of the diseases is the difference between somebody who's completely alive and doing well and somebody who's just severely damaged or in fact demised. So because of that, we benefit from the most acute technological development, whether it is use of things like endoscopes, microscopes, or phenomena such as the catheter-based treatments, which we're going to show you, or the use of advanced techniques on imaging, or what we call high-fidelity ultrasounds, using things that are called neuronavigation, where it's like a GPS brain of the map that helps us know where we are in a particular time. So because of that, it also means it's a field that is extremely dynamic. What was true last week is often not true this week. I mean, that's a sort of an extreme example, but that's quite true. 6 months is a big time to change. So what then happens is that we have to have frequent forums where we inform each other that actually this is the latest literature. The Congress is one of those major events where for a national Congress once a year and for a continental Congress once every 2 years, we meet. And you are doing vascular disorder, someone else is doing brain tumor, someone else is doing pediatrics, and we meet and say, this is the current literature, and this is the best practice.
This is the climate parameters now?
We have a brain dissection course, and in this, the treatment, application of the skill in safely opening up corridors in the brain, accessing diseased areas, and then being able to manage them, whether they're vascular disorders with something like a clip or removal of tumors, is those safe corridors of access and exit, which improve patient outcome, can only be gotten through experience, high fidelity magnification, lighting, and so on. And so the skills which are going on here is really to transfer that skill set to the senior residents. so that when they are now consultants in a year or two, that becomes part of the tools that they use to give treatment. So those are just the two examples. And there are many others we could go into, but I think those ones illustrate why the technology, why we should use it, what we're using it for, and why it's actually not just part of it is mandatory. You cannot practice modern neurosurgery with some of the without some of the skills. The first one is the brain dissection course that we are at Chiromo, which is also by the International Association of Neurosurgical Anatomy, led by Professor Imad Kanan and his group, who are here right now conducting the course. The second course that is going on is what is called the Up Surgeon course, which is also a practical workshop for younger trainees, which is at the Aga Khan University Hospital. And then the third course that is going on is the neuroendovascular catheter-based treatments for vascular disorders that is taking place at the Villa Rosa Kempinski.
Yeah, it's right there, under your arm.
The CANS is a continental organization. The full names for CANS is the Continental Association of African Neurosurgical Societies, which is basically every nation on the continent has got a neurosurgical society which represents the neurosurgeons in that country. And the main goal is to promote the education and training and obviously the quality of neurosurgery that is practiced in those different countries. So this is our continental body. You can think of the African Union of Neurological Societies. So every 2 years we have a biannual meeting. This meeting serves to review what is new in the literature, what are the best practices, from training to practice, to how do we improve our craft. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
But nothing changes.
No, it won't change up here. So when you find it here, you check to see like or anything, you know, you can practice.
The value of this technology is how easy it is to set up. This isn't an anatomy lab. This is a standard lab, and we could have used any classroom. The models came in a box, and the participants themselves brought their own phones. So in terms of how easy to access, we have the most digitally savvy generation we've ever had. So we are learning in a way that is what most people do every day. And also because it allows self-directed learning. So none of these trainees have to study at the same rate. We've given them modules, they're choosing which ones they want to study, and they are going at their own pace. They're also working together to figure it out together. So if you ask me why this is important, it's because it's how we need to learn. Particularly in neurosurgery, it's very technology heavy if you want to perform good surgical practice. So teaching this to our residents at the very early years is very, very important. That's the first thing. The second thing is cost. The cost of cadaveric storage, the cost of the technical expertise required to have good quality for the brain is much higher than some of the other specimens in the body. So this allows us to have a reproducible model. Whatever model I have today, if tomorrow I come and the student didn't understand, I can take them through every step without needing another head to do the same. It also has quizzes within it. So a student can do practice and find out where the gaps are in their knowledge. Yeah? It also, within it, explains why we do what we do and also gives them caveats for safe practice. So if they're looking at a particular surgical practice, as they're going through the model, it also tells them why you need to do a particular point. Yeah? So it's the way of the future. It integrates it also with other modalities of imaging. So if you looked at the VR, when they're in theater, within that space, there's also modern imaging on one wall. There's your patient, and then it's integrated with what we call neuronavigation. So we even have a model here, which we do in particular here at Aga Khan, which is standard for all our trainees. We teach them all the modern technologies, including neuronavigation, which increases accuracy on how they practice. So the difference in this particular course is we're not just teaching our trainees. We've got all these guys from across Africa when we're learning together. So that's exciting.
Well, there are so many models, okay? One of it is to illustrate the anatomy of the brain. The other one is to show you the different routes which the surgeon has to use to get to different pathologies inside the brain. So for the first model, which shows you the structure, that's the anatomy of the brain, you're able to see all the different sides of the brain from above, below, lateral. You're able to see the vessels that take blood to the brain. You're able to see the different cables, that is the fibers, okay, that take information to and from the brain. Before you do surgery, you need to be able to be trained, you need to have some skills. Okay, so you are not going to practice on the patient. You need to practice somewhere before you get to the patient. So that is why you need to have this hands-on. And then once you feel that you are comfortable enough to be able to maybe go through a particular corridor to be able to work on the patient's brain, then you can now work on the patient, live patient.
When you first start in neurosurgery and you handle the drill, it feels incredibly foreign. I don't think anybody picks up the drill and does it beautifully from day one. In fact, the first time I did it as a trainee, I just remember trying to hide my tremor because I was so nervous. And today I see the guys in the same position, but instead of practicing in the theater with the nurses and the senior consultants watching and the patient there asleep in front of you, they're practicing in a setting with no consequences for the patient. And they're learning the limits of what you can and can't do with an electric drill.
Seen the one which is for the more advanced trainees, the dissection of the cadavers. So this is a non-cadaveric model, which is tissue using various techniques, simulated. So some of it is 3D printed silicone that simulates soft tissue. It's coupled with good software to project in a 3D fashion the anatomy. Now this enables us as a force multiplier to conduct courses in a much safer way. So what the advantage of simulated learning, I think as one of the experts you've spoken to, is that we're able to impart anatomical knowledge and dissection knowledge through low-risk models. So that means, in other words, you don't practice on a live patient. So it will be very good to acquire those technical skills so you can apply them onto the patient, and that really increases the safety of the training. It also increases confidence as well as increases safety of the patient. Confidence so that the trainee can do the technique 10, 15 or 20 times until they have got that confidence without having to face a live patient, so to speak. And obviously safety for the patient, that the first time they're operated not by someone who's done it once or twice before, but somebody who's done it 15, 20 times, and not only that, they're also confident in it. So that's really the course of what this upsurgeon course is supposed to be. It's also really heavily influenced by huge technologies that have come up over the last 2 years. Like I said, 3D printing, projection, and videography and so on, that is really enabling what would have taken an anatomy lab 20 or 30 bodies before to teach to be used on a single piece of equipment. So most of the trainees here are in the first, second year of their training. The trainees we saw in Chiromo are in the 4th, 5th years, 6th years of training. And the guys we saw at Kempinski have really finished training in the fellowship years.
Shows you how different parts of the brain connect. So let me just reduce them to just a few. There are different connections that you can look at. All of them have different significance. So when you're planning your surgery, you need to know which fibers you might cut and how the patient might present after surgery. This is a lot around memory, yeah? How you store new memory into older memory. Yeah? And if these structures are damaged, then every day is the same day. Because you have short-term memory. You will meet me in the morning, you will greet me again at 10, you will greet me...
Happy to see you later.
You'll be happy to see me in the evening. Yes.
The advantage is that even at home, you can train, you can get the skill training at home before going to the hospital. When I was a medical student, the only opportunity we had was maybe to watch somebody operate on the cadaver. But with this virtual technology, they can practice at home, in their library, wherever they are. It suffices that you have your smartphone. The goal is for the trainees, the attendees at the end of the day, to be able to understand the structure of the brain. And for the most senior young neurosurgeons, they should be able to feel that they've acquired some skills, which is going to help them to provide more adequate surgical treatment for their patients.
Simulation is in its infancy, particularly in a subspecialty field like neurosurgery. We're going to see more and more different technologies, more and more different companies, some for profit, some non-profit, some using technologies like 3D printing, some using technologies like augmented reality. It's all coming together, and it's still in its infancy. What's exciting about it is that it's going to help our mission here in Kenya, where we all know that we need more neurosurgeons, but we also all know that we need every neurosurgeon to be excellent. We don't want more neurosurgeons who aren't trained in what they need to do. We want neurosurgeons who are ready to go out and take excellent care of patients, and this will help us get there.
You cannot get better without practice, and you cannot get practice with the absence of resources and the knowledge that you require. So whatever they're learning in their textbooks, they are reinforcing it with active practice and group work. Yes? These models, of course, are things that you can take home with you. So we can have this model here today. Tomorrow we can take the model to theater. The following week we can take it at outreach and teach someone else, which is much, much easier than doing the same with a cadaver. Yeah? So if tomorrow a governor from X county called me, I could reproduce this class overnight. And that's a game changer. This whole program today is happening in the context of the growth of neurosurgery within the continent. We're currently holding our Congress. It's the first time it's come to East Africa. And it's primarily led by young neurosurgeons, majority of whom have trained on the continent. We have over 200 neurosurgeons, and Kenya is privileged to have 2 training programs. The University of Nairobi program, which is accredited by the World Federation of Neurosurgeons for training, not just for Kenyans, but in the region. And then the College of Surgeons of East, Central, and Southern Africa. So we also, in both programs, we're training around the region. We have neurosurgeons in 7 of our 47 counties and growing. So having the ability to train, having the ability to showcase what we're able to do is very important. And I think that for the lay public who are learning, who are watching this and trying to figure out, do they want to do neurosurgery, it is possible to get trained in this country at the moment, just as well as you would in many other parts of the world. And that's something to celebrate.
Now, although virtual reality and augmented reality are yet to achieve widespread adoption, there is a significant opportunity for such technologies to enhance healthcare in Kenya. So no tech is far-fetched. Somehow, someone somewhere needs it. In fact, needed it like yesterday. Well, it cannot get any more scientific than this, and that's what Techfile is about. And a special thanks to the team that worked on this. We cannot unsee what we saw in Chiromo, but Aga Khan was fun. My name is Kelley. Keep watching KTN News.